Is it? Let's see. Yep, good. All right, I can see. It's always nice to see yourself squinting at a screen. Cool. Hi, everybody. We are definitely live, and we are here for our monthly content analysis report. We'll be taking a look at all the content that's been shared across the LearnCades network to have a better idea about what was trending, and of course, also be thinking about why it was trending, why things were getting more views, better click-through rates, better engagement in terms of the content that was shared. And we always look at a cross section of the different topics that are in the Kubernetes ecosystem to see what people are interested in, what's getting the highest rate of engagement, so that people can make better decisions about how to engage with the community. Luckily, I don't have to do this alone. I'm joined by two wonderful people who you see here on screen. I'll let them introduce themselves. First of all, I'll start with you, Amit.
Yeah, thanks, Bart. So hi, Amit. I'm a colleague of Bart's here at LearnCades. So I talk to brands about everything go to market, help them see what the right kind of content is to hit their objectives, and engage with our community. So hi.
Very good. And we're also joined today by a very special guest who I've been working with in the Kubernetes ecosystem since I got started in it 5 years ago. We'll be talking about different topics where we've crossed paths. But can you introduce yourself, Courtney, for people who don't know you?
Sure. Thanks for having me today. It's great to be here. My name is Cortney Nickerson. I'm head of community at Kyverno, which is an open source Kubernetes native policy engine that's created by Nirmata. I work across open source and end user ecosystems. I help grow Kyverno adoption, support contributors, look for integrations, create content, and generally talk about why policy as code is something that people should be interested in using.
Very good. And with that in mind, too, I understand that Kyverno will be having a very important event towards the end of the year in Atlanta. What's that about?
Incredibly important event. We have an inaugural KyvernoCon co-located event at KubeCon Atlanta. It will be happening on November 10th. This is the first time we're having this event. We're very excited about this. We have over 3 billion downloads of our open source tools, so we're expecting quite a large turnout from our community. But our CFP is open until June 30th, so if you are a Kyverno user or just use policy as code, please feel free to submit. And for those of you who won't be at KubeCon North America, we are also going to be having a KyvernoCon virtual event for our global community. Since we do have such a large global community, we will be hosting a virtual event with the CNCF also. So that CFP will be open next week.
Fantastic.
Great.
Amit, I think we need to work on our proposal. But in addition, I want to mention a special fun fact about today's webinar is that each one of us is in a different country. Normally, I'm in Spain, not too far away from where Courtney is. Amit's in London, but today I find myself in Prato, Italy, which is just outside Florence, and I'm at the EDB office. And EDB, if you're familiar with Postgres, Cloud Native PG, CNCF project. Courtney and I crossed paths many years ago with Gabriele Bartolini. We'll be talking about data on Kubernetes later on. Just want to say a special thanks to the folks here for letting me use their office to be able to do this webinar. But let's crack on, all right? So in terms of the things we're going to be looking at, if you've attended these before, these are the things we'll be looking at in terms of topic analysis, the trends that are standing out. Today, we're going to be paying extra special attention to what is about security content. What we mean when we say security, the kind of things that are catching people's attention. In other live streams that we've done about our monthly content analysis is we've looked at topics like resource optimization, don't worry, we'll be looking at it again, and also data on Kubernetes, which has also come back. So look at the top engaging content across our network. When we talk about the LearnCades network, if you go to our website, you'll see all the different branches that we have that you actually can see in the first slide, where you see all of them here. So looking at the different things that are sourced there, this is where we're pulling this data from. All right, our podcast, our events page, our newsletter, all those different sources. And so, like I said, we'll be looking at that. And then the key trends and insights, and then also recommendations for the folks out there that are creating content, thinking about how they can best engage with the Kubernetes community. These are the things we're going to be focusing on. And of course, if you have any questions, if you would like to subscribe to get these regular reports, please reach out to Amit or myself, and we'll be happy to get that to you so that you can have a copy. Now let's keep moving. All right, good. So like I said, we analyzed over 2 million impressions every month. These are the different things that are sourced across our network. If you follow us on LinkedIn or other social media, you'll probably be seeing these things quite frequently. So in terms of the topic analysis, Amit, do you want to take it away?
Yeah, sure. So each month we look at different topics that are generating the most awareness and engagement from our community. Generally speaking, if you've been following these webinars or read the reports, we'll see some very familiar topics that say consistent month on month or week on week even as well, and we'll see some new ones as well. And what we try to do is see where there are opportunities for brands, where there are opportunities for content writers and marketers to engage with the community, and also where the community can get more value from different types of content. So for example, we're looking at the top categories here from last month. We might see some categories or topics with a huge amount of impressions, of views, of clicks, but then if the topic is actually quite saturated, it might not see as big an opportunity as some others. But we'll dive into that now in the following slides. Bart, if you don't mind.
Okay. Yep.
So looking at infrastructure. So it's a topic that quite frankly is always covered really well. I think month on month this definitely comes up, and it always has a really good amount of traffic and a very high amount of content volume as well. So I think this is great for brands who perhaps have a really heavy content strategy. They've got the resources, I suppose, and people or funds or whatever it might be to really be churning out lots and lots of content, and where infrastructure might be part of an overall content strategy. But perhaps if you're a smaller brand or an individual or someone who's just getting started with content writing space, and you're looking to create impact through perhaps more limited resources, you may want to focus on something else, because with so much traffic and so much content, it can be a bit more difficult, I suppose, to stand out. So you might want to try a subtopic or cross categories as well. So you might want to write about infrastructure, but infrastructure related to something else, because as we've seen in previous reports, the cross category analysis does really, really well, or the cross category content does really, really well, I should say, from our analysis. So I don't know if Bart, Cortney had anything to add from the infrastructure point, and if you're seeing something similar from where you're sitting, or any trends you'd like to bring up.
Yeah, I mean, certainly in the last couple of years, we've seen a lot of stuff in the platform engineering space. PlatformCon just happened or is happening in London, as far as I understand, and a lot of stuff has been going on there. Cortney, you've spoken multiple times in the co-located event focused on platform engineering and KubeCon. What do you feel? Do you agree that there's saturation, or that there's more need for specialization or branching out to cross, sort of pollinate different topics?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing to keep in mind here is that platform engineering, everybody is in a different phase of maturity there. And so the types of things that people and the type of content that people are consuming very much is going to be determined by how mature their platform process actually is, as well as how mature they are in terms of adopting Kubernetes. Those are going to be very impactful. And so specifically thinking about companies that are trying to build tooling for these people and communicate directly to that end user, I think one of the biggest things to think about is, who is your actual ICP? Who are you trying to actually get to engage with your content, and how mature do you think they actually are in their own journey? And then focus your content on that maturity level, and definitely what Amit was saying in terms of cross-pollination. Those things are really important. Platform is a very big word, just like infrastructure, and there are a lot of different subcategories included in both of those topics. Think about how you can integrate different tools, or what the actual use case is that you want people to understand, and focus more on those things. So is your tool helping somebody with cost efficiency? Well, focus on infrastructure plus cost savings, and then dial down into the actual technicalities of things. But the more I spend time in this space, the more I realize that platform teams can be absolutely a mature and well-oiled machines, or they can be really, really tiny groups of 2 or 3 people who are trying to create an entire machine, and they have very different needs in terms of the content they're consuming. I think that's probably why we see so much content in this space. It's the same for infrastructure. Everything depends on a scalable infrastructure once you adopt Kubernetes. So being able to have content across the board that actually is going to speak to your ICP and the maturity level that you're hoping they're at is really, really important. Know your end user.
Love it. Let's keep moving.
Very good. Resource optimization is, I think, the gift that keeps on giving, I suppose. So I think month on month it keeps coming up, and the community, are very interested in it. They engage with content around resource optimization, and I guess from a company perspective, why wouldn't you want to optimize your resources? Why wouldn't you want to try and save some money in what can be a very expensive or costly endeavor for a business in terms of budgets and technology and so on? So I think the main thing to say about resource optimization is for content marketers to keep doing what you're doing, because the audience is engaging with it. They're engaging well, and they are still seeking that content. There's not a massive amount of content out there for it, but I think there's still a decent amount. And what we've seen from our analysis is that yes, technical content is great, but also technical content that takes you through perhaps a use case or a case study of where someone has implemented something successfully really goes down well, so that yes, the audience can learn about it from a technical perspective, but they can also learn about how other businesses, companies, individuals have implemented it successfully, so that they perhaps might be able to learn from it or mimic it or so on. So yeah, definitely one to continue with if you are investing in this area.
Great. Yeah, echo that. I think one of the challenges faced here is also in security. Sometimes talking about use cases, success stories. For security, we got hacked and all of our data was robbed and given out all over the place. How many people want to speak about that? Or we were wasting millions of dollars on our Kubernetes infrastructure and hadn't optimized. It's about getting the right starting point to be able to explain that. But then, as you said, also, Amit, is can you show me from a technical perspective how you solve this problem in a way that I can relate to it, and giving people the tools and the know-how that's necessary to be able to put that in practice. So yeah, good. Let's keep going. Networking.
So networking, we've seen a really big increase in engagement, which wasn't, usually we see the usual suspects, and we see something quite consistent, but this has been this along with security, which we'll come on to as well. This has been something new for this month, and I have to say I haven't been able to put my finger just yet on perhaps what's driving that increased interest. So, Bart, Cortney, I don't know if you have your finger on any events or any topical situations or conversations that are happening within the community from your side that might be driving this. But yeah, I'm still looking into it.
I think as for every topic that we're going to speak about today, Cortney has participated in a co-located event that's related to it. But it's true. She was involved in CiliumCon. I was involved in CiliumCon once upon a time in 2023 for different reasons. But Cortney, what's your take on this? When we're looking at networking, is eBPF just topping the charts? Are there other topics that are relevant there? Who are the people that people should be paying attention to? What do you think?
eBPF is definitely part of the reason that we see a lot more interest in networking. Also, how cool is it that you have something that lets you interact with the kernel without screwing everything up? This is something that just draws people straight in, but it's an incredibly powerful technology. And I think one of the biggest things is there's a rise in microservices and multi-cluster environments, platform engineering as well. So networking automatically becomes a core concern. It's not just your ops team, it's your developers that now have to understand some basic layer of networking. There's a big push for zero trust architectures as well. All of that then turns into a networking question. You need to know that your network access controls are actually working appropriately. You're embedding them into your CI/CD and your GitOps pipelines. Again, these are themes that we're constantly hearing people talk about because they're core components of your platform, they're core components of your daily SDLC processes. So service mesh complexity also draws in a lot of fatigue. It's created a space for a much simpler policy-driven networking tool system. That really is a superpower of eBPF, is that people kind of go, oh my gosh, I can't handle this service mesh anymore. And they start looking for another policy-driven alternative that's a bit more flexible, but provides the same amount of trust and security. So and Kyverno also, we do help with certain aspects of policy for networking. But the truth is there's a lot of interest in this because we're trying to simplify a service mesh that generally is incredibly complex. The more you can put some guardrails around what you're doing, starting with networking, which is something that's going to affect the rest of your systems and how you're going to manage things, the easier it is to then move forward and implement shift left policies and everything else that you're doing as well. So I think that's probably the biggest reason that we're seeing such a surge in networking. It's not just the power of eBPF and its popularity. It's the complexity of service meshes, the fact that zero trust is becoming more and more necessary, and people are looking for a simplified way to get this done in their platform.
Yeah, and on the note of simplification, this has come up multiple times in our webinars, that when we asked over 50 people in the Kubernetes community about their least favorite Kubernetes feature, network policy management was the most frequent answer, as something that cannot be avoided and is quite painful. Now, if you're in this space, if you're interested in networking, you definitely need to check out Gateway API and all the things that are going on there, because for a lot of folks, it's been a big source of relief in the networking space and also network policy management. So definitely check that out if that's something that you want to pursue further and have a better idea about. But let's keep moving. All right, so next topic.
So security now is a topic that we identify as the fastest growing category. For those who have followed the last two webinars or last two reports that we've put out, I think it was data on Kubernetes category that was a real opportunity, where we had a very, very low volume of content, but we had a massive engagement rate, and the impressions per piece of content was really, really high. And so that's what we're looking for here. We're looking at kind of that next trend so that we can try and help content marketers identify what that trend is and get ahead of the curve, and create some engagement around what they're writing. So security is very much one. I think this will carry over through the summer. So where are we now? June, July. Certainly it's going to be a prominent topic. So if you are looking for something to write about where the engagement is high, as a topic, or even if you can kind of, like when you say cross-pollinate this topic among something else that is your primary objective, but you can bring traffic through by addressing it through security, then definitely try to address it in that way. Because I think the data on Kubernetes opportunity, I think, really came and passed us by a little bit. We didn't see a massive uptick from content marketers jumping on that bandwagon, but it'd be great to see people addressing this, as it is something that the community are after. But again, Cortney, perhaps is this a area of growth that you're seeing as well? Are you or colleagues addressing this topic in different ways? Tell me what you see.
Yeah, absolutely. So very much tying into the surge in network policies, right? And the fact that people are so involved in that. It's also a security concern, but we're seeing security starting to grow across the board. This is also something that happens with maturity. A lot of times when people are first adopting Kubernetes, their biggest concern isn't security, it's just getting it up and running. And then you have resource optimization, which is, I think, a continuous practice that's never really going to go away. But as you mature, all of a sudden you kind of iron out those kinks in getting things up and running, and you've scaled some things out, and then all of a sudden you start to have time to realize, oh, we really should be having a much more mature security posture for our mature infrastructure and deployments. And so we also see a lot of governmental pushes around this, but a lot of there's a lot of research going on as well. And then with the surge to AI and the idea that you're going to be running so many things and having so much data being housed on your Kubernetes infrastructure, these all become huge concerns for teams. So SBOM validation, that was a big one that kind of started, I think, the security boom last year when people started talking about SBOMs and having to create those. CVE prevention, this is a very big one. There's drift detection, which is always an issue in K8's deployments. In terms of Kyverno and Nirmata, we are a policy engine and a control plane that helps you actually resolve your issues with policy. So we help people put policies and guardrails around literally any aspect of their infrastructure, their SDLC, or anything else in their pipeline. Security is definitely something that we see our end users using our tooling for. It helps them exponentially. It's not just security, obviously, but there's definitely a push and growth as people continue to mature in this space. They need to mature their security posture. And security is not easy. There's so many different ways. We've all heard it's repeated over and over again. If it's on the cloud, it's not secure. And so there's so many different levels and layers of this. So again, thinking about content creation for a security, specifically cross-pollination, being very clear about what it is that you're securing, what that use case is, and what people can expect from it. Giving a very clear explanation of why this use case was important to you and your company, and the reason you invested the time to learn whatever tool or implement whatever policies are there, and what the end result is and your return on investment for that. And those types of things are incredibly important. I do think they will perform very well as people continue to kind of pull back the different abstraction layers of security, because it is a very broad term to just talk about security. So the more direct people can be about the type of use case, what it is that you're securing, why you've chosen the tool that you've chosen, and how that plays into your platform or your overall infrastructure, and the integrations that it has with other tools on the CNCF landscape, for example. All of those things will help your content perform much better, I think.
Great. Cool.
Great.
Yep. So we've seen this, and I think also as an invitation to folks out there creating content, there are lots of different ways you can approach this. Use your creativity, see how you can build bridges with other areas. Things such as vibe coding now, with so much AI going in to code that's being written. How legitimate is that code from a security perspective? Is somebody actually checking it before it goes into production? Is this would this be good enough at an enterprise level? There's so much stuff to be thinking about there. So I think people that are out there in the content creation space, this is a great time to be interacting with folks that are very active when it comes to creating good security content. And once again, if that's something you're interested in pursuing further, would be happy to speak about it more in the future. Let's keep going. So the thematic trends, that we saw overall, resource optimization remains critical. We've seen this time and time again for months now. It keeps coming back. So if people haven't considered this as something they want to get in their, in their content that they're putting out there, I think it's a great time to do so. We see more and more startups that are thriving in the cloud native ecosystem in this space. GitOps momentum, no real surprise. In CubeFM, every time we start an episode, we always ask people about, Kubernetes tools that people are keeping an eye on. And I don't want to say 9 times out of 10, but it's quite frequent that, people will mention either Argo or Flux. And, we're also going to be seeing the first FluxCon in November in KubeCon, which will be alongside KyvernoCon, happening on the same day. But, ArgoCon has been happening for a while. And so, this GitOps is still very much a thing. And also that, that cross-pollination with different content that we see sometimes around security or different aspects there too with GitOps. And then tool-focused content dominates. No real surprise, given the learning curve with when it comes to adopting this kind of tooling and understanding the trade-offs, migrating from one tool to another, things of that nature. It's no real surprise. So that's something for content creators to keep in mind, that audiences do value that, from tutorials, troubleshooting, and seeing how things work under the hood. Then other newer trends, so seeing graphic user interface tooling gaining traction, vendor-specific content. Oftentimes we do see vendors backing open source projects and then having their own enterprise version. That's no major surprise. And the thing that we noticed that was missing is contrarian viewpoints. And we'll talk about that more in detail. And definitely want to get your feedback about this, Courtney. But how willing are we for folks that are creating content to take a risk, to maybe call something out, to say something that's a bit controversial, but always have to be careful about doing it, not to sound like they're too much on the attack or being toxic. But it can be healthy to get these things out in the open. But what's the best way to do that, and where do we see those things happening? So let's keep going. But to dig in further on this, Courtney, you made your way into tech many years ago through a cybersecurity company that was later acquired by Datadog. When we're talking about security, it's a broad ecosystem that we see through our branch called Kubesploit, where it's very focused on Kubernetes security. Here we've also featured a post from Nirmata talking about it. But when we're talking about security, and particularly from a content perspective, what are the things that comes to mind for you about the content that has performed best, or the content that hasn't performed best, so people know what to avoid? What's your experience been like there?
I think I'll start with the contrarian view of the content that doesn't always perform best. Sometimes when people hear the word security, they automatically scroll past it because they're expecting it to be incredibly dry. And oftentimes they are not wrong. And so I think we always have to remember security is oftentimes an afterthought for people, because it's complex and because it's quite a broad, it's a very broad topic. So it ends up being left until other things get solved. If on top of it, what you create is incredibly dry, nobody really is going to have any interest in it, because if they already didn't have interest in security from the get-go, and this is something that they have to do or that they're being forced to do and they have to learn about, the last thing they want is something that's incredibly dry. So I think oftentimes those of us, myself included, who become lovers of security, we forget that the rest of the world is not like us. They aren't always as keen on this topic or think that it's as cool as we do. And so that is one of the biggest things I think we should keep in mind. Security does not have to be boring. A lot of times the content that performs the best is content that keeps it very simple. Simple and straightforward. I do remember seeing a blog post when S-bombs all of a sudden blew up and they were the thing. It was like 10 steps to building an S-bomb, because everybody needed to know how to do this. It started to become governments started to ask people to do this. It was very straightforward. It was truly just 10 steps. These are the things to keep in mind. It was incredibly informative because it was so short and direct. So security being such a broad and sometimes intimidating topic for people, the more you can break it down into small components and small pieces and optimize that for your SEO, right? Really SEO optimize that small component, but then build on that. So you can build an entire strategy over just explaining and educating people about one specific security topic that moves into, I'm going to educate you about these top 5 things that you need to know. Here's a little bit of a deeper dive in with another piece of content. Let me create a video that's going to be a bit more fun to watch and not take up so much of your time, kind of overviewing those 2 pieces of content prior. Let's now build a use case that's straightforward, that everyone can follow with some code blocks that they can copy and paste with a repo that's already prepared for you so that you can give it a go. Those types of things, the more you can just start off small. It's a very broad thing that you want to teach. It's probably going to be something that's very deep dive that you're going to get to, but you kind of need to build that out in little baby steps for people, because not everybody is a lover of security. So many people are much more inclined to other more fun technologies when they're building things than they're going to be in security. Security, however, is just something that has to be done, and it has to be done well. So the more fun you can make it, the more tangible you can make it, and the more bite-sized pieces you can make it so that people can just bite off a little bit and be like, oh, that wasn't so bad. I think I'll try a little bit more. Oh, that wasn't so bad. At some point, they will end up eating the entire course meal, right? But you need to kind of start off with something that's easily digestible. And a lot of times we don't see that in the security content space.
Bottom line, friends don't let friends create boring security content.
Yeah.
I think it's very well said. Is that don't overwhelm people with too many details. I mean, this is gonna sound, this is dating us a little bit, but like, 2018 when GDPR started getting being rolled out, a lot of people were overwhelmed with way too many details that really didn't concern them, and it needed to be broken down into simple steps and showing the value that was going to be taken or acquired by doing it. And so I encourage folks out there, empathize with the people that you're trying to reach. Remember that there's the attention economy, that people are only going to spend so much time giving you a chance, and you really have to respect that and try and find alternative ways to either have, analogies or things that people can relate to in a more human way. I think there's a lot to be learned from that. Courtney also saw the full range of creative approaches on trying to make the data on Kubernetes topic attractive when we were working together in the data on Kubernetes community, and we did everything from music to doing things in different languages. We created a coloring book, we had raps, we had lots of different stuff, because it was a way that, okay, if we can make these things more conversational and not just a one-way street, and getting people involved to share their talents and finding ways that these can overlap, we can make this more of a celebration rather than I am being force-fed information that I'm simply not interested in. So I think there's a lot to be said for that. Let's keep moving. So what else is engaging in the community apart from security? Of course, there are lots of different things, but the thing that we noticed in our content analysis report is from last month was Freelance, once again talking about the graphic user interface. So the tool utilities definitely driving engagement there. We also saw cube diagrams in terms of visualization. We do create a lot of diagrams in the Learn K8s network that you'll see through all the content that we produce. Particularly, you'll see a lot of it on LinkedIn as well as other places. But for people that are visual learners, to be able to put pieces together. And then continuous promotion with GitOps. As we said before, GitOps very much top of mind for a lot of folks out there. Seems like something that simply cannot be done without. We're actually working on something in the GitOps space from the content side in Learn K8s and CubeFM that you'll be seeing quite soon. So we're also participating in that ongoing paradigm. Other things that we saw. So the data operations gap, all right? So in April, we saw that data on Kubernetes was the #1 opportunity for people to get in on. And it's interesting that it's something that Courtney and I were working on, as long ago as 5 years ago when the data on Kubernetes community started. And it's still something that, considered day 2 operations, so it's kind of an afterthought in a similar way to security. Actually, in some ways, people often don't start with security, but it's something to be added later. And with data on Kubernetes, it can be somewhat similar too. The GitOps ecosystem maturation, as we saw in terms of the click-through rate on continuous promotion with GitOps, why that performs so well, people's genuine interest in learning more about that, and then the rise of visual and GUI GUI tools. Cool. Security content quality improvement, we saw that increase a better click-through rate across the different pieces that we saw there, and then also platform strategy, as we spoke about earlier with infrastructure. So in terms of conclusions, things, takeaways for folks out there that are creating content. There's a definite interest in data on Kubernetes. And obviously data on Kubernetes, we could be talking about streaming workloads. If you're interested in Strimzy, I highly recommend talking to Jakob Schultz, seeing what people are doing there. I think they also organize a StrimzyCon, so there's a fair amount of content about that. If you're interested in databases, you have all the database operators that are out there. Jerome Petazzoni is a great resource. Also the folks here working on Cloud Native PG. Wonderful people if you're interested in that space. But also now we're talking about AI workloads. So, Kit Ops, KIT, like that's something that's becoming, more popular in the Kubernetes ecosystem, or Keats GPT. So then going back to our security trend, we also saw that, that's something of interest. So how can you blend those two things? How can you show security as an opportunity and not just cost? That's also a challenge that people face in the security space. LinkedIn is by far, we've seen so much migration off of X in the Kubernetes world that, LinkedIn really is the primary choice. Getting to the last point, it was interesting that we found this post on LinkedIn. Now, it's about data on Kubernetes, saying why you shouldn't run a database on Kubernetes. It got a lot of traction. So those contrarian viewpoints here on LinkedIn, a lot of times debates don't necessarily get that hot on LinkedIn. In our case, where we see with KubeFM and in LearnKates, is that Reddit is a place where a lot of times a lot of debates will happen. So if you can get your content to generate some conversation there, that can often be a way to get more eyes and ears on it. So like I said, not being afraid to take a step forward, to make a case why you do or don't believe something to be true. That's something that we've definitely seen to get more people interested in it. I do want to ask you about this, Courtney, because you do work for a company that has an open source tool, Kyverno, that has a direct competitor in the CNCF ecosystem, which is Open Policy Agent, or OPA. The people that work on that are absolutely wonderful people that are very friendly and do all kinds of good stuff. But I imagine that sometimes you might be coming head to head, or people will be asking about the trade-offs between one or another. In your experience working on Kyverno content, how do you go about that? How do you go about talking about the strengths of Kyverno while keeping in mind that people will be evaluating both tools simultaneously?
Yeah, this is a great question, especially in our space. OPA is a fantastic team of people behind it. They have incredible maintainers, as do we. We have different approaches to things. And so generally, we don't focus on it's us versus them or them versus us. It's much more of a focus on an educational content of what it is that Kyverno does and the easy way you can get started with policies with Kyverno. And we don't really draw a lot of comparison. That said, a lot of our community members and end users do, as well as community and end users from the OPA community. This is totally normal. It's because everybody has different needs, different pipelines, different teams with different knowledge and backgrounds. And so one tool might be fantastic in one environment, and for somebody else, it might not be the best option. This is the advantage of being in this space, is that there are different approaches because everybody has a different use case, everybody has a different pipeline and platform. And so what we do is we focus on making sure that people understand what it is that we do, what our strongholds are. In doing that, however, we oftentimes see right now we're dealing with the misconception that Kyverno is super easy to get started with, which it is. You can use YAML or Cell in order to create your policies, and it's very straightforward. But people seem to think that because it's simple and straightforward, it can't handle very complex use cases, or that it can only be used in Kubernetes because it's a Kubernetes native approach. Neither of those are true. And so oftentimes people automatically think that, well, I need something that can bridge the gap between my Kubernetes environments and my environments that are on-prem. And so I guess I have to opt for OPA because they just automatically rule us out as being something that's too simple. At the same time, there are a lot of teams that might get stuck using Kyverno, and they have somebody on their team that actually is a Rego expert, and Rego might be something that works better for them because they do have somebody who's very, very, very well versed in Rego. It doesn't mean that OPA is better or worse. It just means that they have somebody on their team who will be much more comfortable creating their policies in Rego than they might be in YAML or in Cell. So we don't take a combative approach, but also it's because we believe that policy as code is important. People should be using it across the board. It's not just security, it's resource optimization, it's naming conventions, it's all kinds of things that when you're functioning at scale, it's going to make your life exponentially better, safer, and save you a lot of money and headache. So a lot of times we don't care which one you use, we just want you to be using it. That said, there used to be a working group, a policy working group. We've worked with lots of people from the OPA project as well as the environment and community at large. on these things, because we just generally, as do the people in the OPA community, believe that people should be using this. So pick and choose the tool that works best for you. Our approach is to make sure that you understand, as best as we're capable of explaining in our content, what it is that you're going to get when you're using Kyverno or a Nirmata approach.
Very good. As one US president once said, speak softly and carry a big stick. So I do admire your non-combative approach and commitment to dialogue. And like you said, that just use one of the solutions. I think that's something I've heard in the past from people that work up in the backup and restore space, saying like, I don't care which one you use, but you definitely need to use something, because this is a problem you don't want to be facing, to not have some kind of a plan for that. So I think that's very helpful to keep in mind. Good. Well, we're getting towards the end. We just, before finishing, want to thank all of the organizations that we continue to partner with to be able to produce the stuff that we do. Thank you very much for joining us today, Cortney. You've covered so many different topics. I think we could probably divide this into create a series out of this, because you really are a jack of all trades. Amit, is there anything you'd like to add for folks who might be interested in subscribing to get these reports directly so they can analyze the data themselves more in detail?
Yeah, thanks, Bart. So yeah, we do this every month. We'll analyze the data from the previous month and make sure that we're recommending the newest insights, the newest engagement, etc. So if you do want the report, by all means reach out. You can drop me a message on LinkedIn, you can drop Bart a message on LinkedIn, and we can add you to the list of people who receive this month by month. It is just one email you get from us. We do not send you anything else. It's literally just this report. So yeah, let us know.
Fantastic. Courtney, if people want to get in touch with you, what's the best way to do so?
That's a great question. Probably CNCF Slack or Kubernetes Slack. I'm on them constantly on the Kyverno channels, or otherwise Cortney.Nickerson@nirmata.com. I am old school emailer. If you have something important, email me, and I probably will take 2 weeks to get around to it, but I will answer eventually.
Old school emailer. That could be a good title. Old school emailer. Cool. Thank you very much for joining us today, Courtney, and thanks to everybody who attended the webinar. Please let us know if you have any ideas about things we can incorporate for the future, things that have worked for you in terms of your content creation strategy. Always interested in hearing that, making that public so other folks can do the same. Take care. We'll speak to you soon. Cheers, everybody. Bye-bye.